What's up, my lovely astrology people? Today we will be diving into Uranus and Gemini and what this means, not just astrologically, but personally. This is not just about a tech boom or the AI era transit like you may have heard somewhere, because Uranus and Gemini marks a massive shift in how we think, how we process, and how we connect mentally, both with ourselves and with each other. It's the beginning of a long period where our thoughts, ideas, language, and nervous systems will be under constant upgrade, but sometimes it can cause a breakdown that requires us to adapt alongside these changes. And in this video, I'll be providing a detailed forecast based on your rising sign, the house of your natal Uranus, as well as the house and sign of your natal Mercury placement, as these placements may all receive a little bit of a zap from the Uranus and Gemini transit. And if you want more detailed forecast videos like these or other detailed astrology content that breaks down your entire chart, not just the basic placements, please give this video a like, a comment, and subscribe to my channel. Shameless plug, but not really. Just to let the algorithm know that this stuff is your jam. And so now let's get back to what you're really here for, the forecast. Uranus is the planet of disruption, innovation, and sudden insight. Gemini rules the mind, language, learning, and duality. So together, this is a mental revolution. That can look like clarity that comes out of nowhere, new perspectives that change everything, but it can also show up as mental overstimulation, anxiety, or breakdowns of logic and systems that once made us feel safe. So we got to be careful to keep our heads screwed on tightly, you know? And so some of you may find your thoughts are speeding up, while others may feel more scattered, reactive, or uncertain than usual. Communication glitches, information overload, or nervous system fatigue are all possible, but so are genius level downloads, fresh language for things you've never been able to say before, and the courage to speak or think in ways that you were once afraid to. This transit is going to affect all of us differently, though, depending on our chart. That's why I like to do a forecast on multiple placements. Some people may experience this through relationships, others through career or health or creativity or deep inner realizations, or maybe a mix of multiple things. That's why in this video, I'll walk you through how Uranus and Gemini may impact you based on your rising sign, your natal Mercury sign, your natal Mercury house, and your natal Uranus house, because those show us not only how you think, but where these revolutions may unfold in your life a little bit naturally. And so let's get into it. Let's go in 3, 2, 1. Time for the forecast. Boom. And in case you didn't get the memo, that means go down to the description and click your timestamps. Love you. Okay, if you didn't want to kiss, I'm sorry. Just forget that I did that. Aries Risings, for you, this is all happening in your third house. And so shocks to the system are going to come through conversations, your local environment, and your own mental wiring. I'm calling this one the cognitive glitch. And so you know that feeling of having a really fast engine, but being stuck in traffic? That's the frustration this transit is here to solve. You're going to have these moments where you suddenly see the code behind your own thoughts. It's like your pattern recognition skill gets turned up to high, and you'll spot a mental habit that you've been trapped in for years. And once you see that loop, you can't unsee it. This isn't just about self-judgment. It's about liberation. It's like a cosmic debugger showing you exactly where your thinking gets snagged so you can finally truly move forward at your natural speed. Maybe it shows up during a late night talk with a sibling or a friend where you suddenly hear how often you downplay yourself. Or maybe a podcast hits you sideways and unhooks a belief that you didn't even realize was weighing you down. But a caution to remember at this time is don't let your newfound mental clarity morph into impulsive speech. With Uranus here, the urge to speak your truth fast and sharp is real, but not every truth bomb needs to be detonated without care. For Taurus risings, this hits your second house. This means that your concepts of value, worth, and security are up for radical redefinition. I know for you, stability is everything. The very idea of disruption can feel a little bit threatening. This transit gets that, and it is here to show you where the real stability lives. It's going to work through new insights that get you questioning what you're investing your energy, time, and money into. The revolution here is discovering that true security isn't something you own, it's something you truly embody. It's your ability to adapt, to create, to respond to your resourcefulness. This could play out as a sudden urge to declutter your life, or a surprise side hustle that reminds you that you're more capable than you thought. And maybe one day you realize you're clinging onto a job or possession that's draining you, and walking away feels like gaining oxygen. It's not a loss, it's freedom. But a caution to watch out for at this time is watch out for impulsive spending or financial rebellion disguised as liberation. Make sure your new version of freedom doesn't leave your future self unanchored. Gemini risings, buckle up, because Uranus is going to be transiting your first house, and this means one thing: you are going to become the disruption. This isn't just chaos, though, it's the truth of who you are erupting out, often in unpredictable but exhilarating ways. Don't be shocked if people who've known you for years say you've changed. And maybe you have, but not randomly. You're just done pretending to be somebody you're not. It's a self-rebellion. And the personal relief here is real. Dropping old personas is like taking off a costume that's a little too tight. You might shift your aesthetic overnight. You might change how you move through the world, or say something in a moment of bold honesty that cracks open a whole new layer of yourself. Think of that day you looked in the mirror and realized, I'm done shrinking. That's the vibe that you're going to get here. But a caution to remember at this time is, while reinvention is empowering, be careful not to alienate people who genuinely support you because they still recognize the old you. Cancer risings, for you, this is happening in the quietest part of your chart, your 12th house. This can feel a little disorienting, like floating in a fog, but what's really happening is that your intuition may be leveling up. Revelations may come in dreams or in the form of deja vu, or the subtle shifts in your emotional atmosphere. You'll have moments where an old anxiety suddenly feels a little bit foreign to you, like it doesn't actually belong to you. Maybe you're journaling and you write something that makes you stop in your tracks. Like, wait, this fear isn't mine. Maybe that belongs to somebody else and I've taken it on myself. These might be the types of realizations you come to. And this insight lets you put it down with grace. It's not yours to carry anymore. The healing here is trusting those quiet moments and recognizing that your sensitivity isn't weakness. It's the finely tuned antenna picking up transmissions meant just for you. But a caution at this time is, don't isolate too much in the name of spiritual growth. Your inner world matters, but so does staying tethered to real life support. For my Leo risings, your revolution is social and ideological. This is in your 11th house, your friendships, communities, and future dreams. For you and your fiercely loyal heart, realizing your crew isn't your crew anymore, or that your community isn't your community anymore, it can sting a little bit. But it also might be the beginning of being truly aligned on a mental level. You may suddenly feel out of sync with a friend group or a community that you've been part of for years. Maybe you're in a group chat and you just don't respond. You hear the conversations and think, this isn't really who I am anymore. And that's the truth of it. You're outgrowing spaces that no longer reflect your actual vision. But this also opens the door to new communities, one where you feel electrically alive, or new friendships as well. You're not just finding new people or a new community or a new sense of community or a new definition of community. You're remembering what you actually care about. And a caution at this time, though, is don't confuse detachment with discernment. Not every mismatch in your life means abandonment, because some relationships are just evolving. They're not actually ending. Virgo risings, your public path and career are getting a full-on reboot. Uranus is in your 10th house, shaking up your reputation, your responsibilities, and what success even means to you. You might realize you've been performing a version of competence for so long that you're actually exhausted and burnt out. Maybe you have a day where you can't just fake it anymore, or you blurt out an honest truth in a meeting and everything in your life changes. This personal breakthrough here is that you don't have to have it all figured out to be worthy, but also maybe you'll change your path in its entirety to more align with you, because your idea of success is evolving, less about external polish and more about internal alignment. You're being called to show up in the world as someone messy and bold and full of brilliance that doesn't need permission but just goes for what they want. And I know that can be a little scary for a Virgo rising, especially because you're Mercury ruled, but that's part of life, you know? It's the part of yourself that is ready to embark on a new journey and who knows that you have to experiment to sort of get where you want to go. But a caution at this time is be mindful not to burn down professional bridges just because you're finally ready to break the mold, because radical honesty still benefits from timing. For my Libra risings, your worldview is about to evolve and vary dramatically because with Uranus in your 9th house, this is shaking up your big picture beliefs, your philosophy, and how you define truth. This could show up as a crisis of faith or even something as small as hearing a friend challenge a long-held opinion of yours, and maybe it sticks. Suddenly, your mental scales are tilting and you're reevaluating everything from your politics to your personal ethics. The transformation here is that you stop seeking balance for its own sake and start creating a worldview that actually resonates with your lived experiences. You may even pursue a surprising area of study or travel that opens up new doors. What matters now, though, is that your inner integrity, not your external agreement, is what takes precedence. But a caution at this time is stay grounded as your beliefs shift, because there's a difference between expanded perspective and chasing novelty for its own sake. For my Scorpio rising, this one is deep for you because Uranus is in your 8th house, which means long buried truths, unspoken dynamics, and maybe emotional depths are coming for full review. You're used to knowing things intuitively, but now the truth may be showing up in plain sight. Maybe you overhear something, or maybe a, in quotations, coincidence leads you to a journal entry or an old email that blows open a financial or a family pattern or an old pattern, or even like an intimate pattern that you've had like within yourself, or a pattern around fear or like your internal deepest most self. And it may be jarring at first, but it's also the thing that lets you stop spinning around the unknown. There's a raw kind of freedom here. You no longer have to hold tension of what's hidden. This isn't just a revelation, it's a release for you, and that clears room for deeper intimacy and honest transformation. But a caution at this time is don't rush into confrontation just because a secret surfaces, because not all truths need to be weaponized. You can move on as well. For my Sagittarius risings, Uranus is shaking up your 7th house of partnership, and as someone who values freedom above all, the disruption here is discovering how often you've unconsciously limited yourself within one-on-one relationships. You may find yourself revisiting the rules of love, whether about monogamy, commitment, or simply the kind of person you think you should be with. You could have a conversation that jolts you awake, or suddenly crave space in a relationship that once felt like home. This isn't about running, it's about recalibrating. The revolution is in realizing that a relationship that honors your truth can be more liberating than being alone. And if you're single, you might finally name the kind of partner that would actually expand your spirit. But a caution at this time is don't throw away connection just because it suddenly feels a little bit constricting. Make sure your need for freedom isn't like a fear in disguise. For my Capricorn risings, this is Uranus shaking up your 6th house of your daily work, health, and systems. For someone as structured as you naturally, this may sound like chaos, but it's actually intelligent disruption. You might suddenly hit a wall with burnout, or realize that hyperproductivity, or the feeling that you need to be hyperproductive, even if you consider yourself lazy, which I know some people do, is taking a toll on you. Maybe you cancel a packed week and discover that the rest that you need to take actually makes you more effective, or your body could be sending you a very clear signal that something has to change. Maybe you start working out or bettering your diet. The breakthrough here is realizing you don't need to micromanage your life to be respected or to be worthy. There's a smarter, more efficient way to live and work, one that includes rest, curiosity, and even a little bit of creative messiness. But a caution at this time is avoid overcorrecting by rejecting all structure. Let evolution be steady and don't throw out your calendar just to prove that you've changed or loosened up a little bit. Aquarius Rising, Uranus is shaking up your 5th house, your joy, creativity, and expression. It's asking, are you actually having fun, or are you just performing fun for others? You might get bored with a creative project that once lit you up, or feel the sudden need to reinvent your image. Maybe you take on a spontaneous hobby or a weird TikTok or social media era, or even a rogue hobby such as karaoke nights, or pursuing that. These things could unlock a part of yourself that you didn't even know you were missing, and maybe it unlocks a part that helps you to have more fun, because the invitation is to let go of the curated version of your joy and welcome in a more experimental, authentic, and electric version of joy. This is about creative rebellion and reclaiming the freedom to enjoy life on your own terms. But a caution at this time is don't let the pursuit of originality push you into performative rebellion. You don't have to be shocking or contradictory in order to be authentic. You could just be yourself and live in that, even if it follows trends or even if it goes against trends. You don't gotta base what you like on trends or being contrary. You can do what you want. That was a little bit of a ramble, but I hope that makes sense. And finally, for my Pisces risings, Uranus is activating your 4th house, which means your roots, home, life, and emotional foundation and your innermost self are being stirred up in unexpected ways. But don't worry, it could be good. This could be literal, moving suddenly, or finding out a family secret, or reconnecting with an estranged relative, or it could be an internal shift. One day you realize you've been carrying emotional baggage that was never yours, or that's been holding you back. Maybe a story passed down through generations may suddenly make sense, or a pattern that you've always felt but couldn't name could start to surface up, like a generational pattern that you've somehow inherited. And the revolution here is learning that you can choose what stories to keep and which ones to lovingly release. You're building a new definition of home, one that's honest, soul deep, and entirely your own. But a caution at this time is in the process of redefining your innermost self or your home. Don't disconnect from people who still love the old version of you, because integration is just as powerful as reinvention. With natal Uranus in the 1st, Uranus and Gemini will electrify your voice, language, and presence. This is a personal reinvention via ideas. People may see a totally new version of you, not because you changed who you are, but because your thinking became unfiltered and alive. You'll stop holding back out of politeness, fear, or misunderstanding. And a good example is maybe you'll launch a podcast, suddenly shift your aesthetic, or become known for saying what others won't. And why this matters is that it isn't about attention, it's about alignment. Uranus and Gemini asks you to express your most liberated mind through body and presence. But a caution at this time is sudden shifts in how you present yourself can come off as erratic or provoke resistance from others. So be careful not to reject your past self just to feel new, and let identity evolve, not detonate. If your Uranus is in your 2nd house, Uranus and Gemini will shatter and rebuild how you think about value and security. This transit pushes you to diversify your income, experiment with unconventional skills, and redefine what's worth it for you, whether emotionally, intellectually, or financially. What you once relied on may not feel stable, but what's newly emerging will be mentally freeing to you. An example is you may ditch a rigid 9-to-5, start multiple side hustles, or invest in teaching something niche. You're not here to earn money the normal way, and Uranus and Gemini urges you to value your ideas and agility, not just your output. But a caution at this time is financial chaos is possible if you chase novelty without grounding it. So watch out for impulsive spending, detachment from budgeting, or relying too much on inconsistent income streams. If your natal Uranus is in your 3rd house, Uranus and Gemini will supercharge your mental clarity. There's a total reboot on how you learn, speak, write, and interact with everyday information. It may feel overwhelming at times, don't get me wrong, like you're channeling static on a TV or something, but breakthroughs will arrive faster than ever. An example on how this can play out is you might feel called to write a memoir, or study astrology or another occult topic, or create short form educational content that shakes people awake, or even like you can go into music or other creative pursuits. Take what resonates, but you are here to disrupt what and how we communicate. Your mind is a transmitter for future thinking. Remember that. But a caution is to keep in mind that there could be mental burnout, information overload, or erratic communication styles that could emerge at this time. So watch out for this and keep yourself grounded if at all possible. Avoid multitasking your way into mental static as well. Take breaks to actually process what you're learning. If Uranus is in your 4th house, Uranus in Gemini wants to free your inner life, starting with your roots. This may mean mental revolutions about family, memory, and emotional safety. Conversations you never thought possible may happen, or you'll realize you don't need them to move on. An example on how this can play out is you may uncover family stories, reframe your childhood, or start writing about your emotional lineage or uncovering emotional truths. Uranus in Gemini helps you rebuild home based on inner truth, not inherited scripts. Your mind becomes your safest place, but a caution at this time is emotional detachment or sudden shifts in living environments may leave you feeling unanchored, so watch for mental escapism in place of real healing. If Uranus is in your 5th house, Uranus in Gemini turns your creativity into a lightning rod. This is a call to take your weirdest ideas a little bit seriously. The more fun you have making or sharing or experimenting with your voice, the more magnetic your work or your pursuits will become. An example is you might create like a viral comic strip or viral art. You may develop a witty persona online or fall in love through intellectual play. And why this matters is that genius doesn't need to be tortured. Uranus in Gemini reminds you that pleasure and intellect can coexist at the same time, but a caution at this time is that chasing novelty over authenticity could lead to burnout or shallow validation. So don't lose your joy by trying to shock others into attention. If your natal Uranus is in your 6th house, Uranus in Gemini wants to rewire your daily patterns and mental wellness. This isn't just about routines, it's about freeing your brain from outdated structures and beliefs that no longer help you thrive. An example on how this can play out is you could discover a new neurodivergent trait, you could find a healing technique that actually works for you, or invent a work process that finally fits your brain style. Why this matters, though, is you don't have to fix yourself. Uranus in Gemini helps you to design your life around your actual mind, not the one that others expect. But a caution at this time is without structure, your days could spiral into disarray. I have this natally, so I get this. Avoid relying only on bursts of inspiration to stay functional because discipline can stay flexible. If your natal Uranus is in your 7th, Uranus and Gemini will flip the script on how you relate and communicate in partnerships. So expect revelations about what compatibility really means and what intellectual chemistry you've been missing in your life. An example is you may rethink monogamy or attract wildly unconventional partners or fall in love through shared obsessions like philosophy or conspiracy theories, or take what resonates with that. And why this matters is that Uranus in Gemini helps you to form relationships that sharpen your mind, not dull it. But a caution at this time is that sudden breakups or an addiction to newness in love may disrupt genuine connection. So don't mistake detachment for freedom, because true intimacy will come through honest dialogue. And so if you ever have a chance to have dialogue with a partner, do that before making any impulsive decisions. If your natal Uranus is in your 8th, Uranus in Gemini brings mental clarity to emotional and energetic entanglements. This is about saying what hasn't been said, whether it's about trauma, money, sex, or shame. You're ready to speak the unspeakable and set yourself and others free. An example on how this can play out is you may write about taboo experiences, finally get clarity in a financial partnership, or name a hidden dynamic that you've always felt but you've never really voiced out loud. And why this matters is that Uranus in Gemini helps you alchemize your shadows into knowledge. Your liberation begins with honesty, but a caution at this time is that emotional disassociation over intellectualizing pain may block real healing. So speak your truth, but let it come from the heart, not just the head. If your natal Uranus is in your 9th, Uranus in Gemini ignites a wildfire in your worldview. You're hungry for new ideas, but not just to collect them. You want to challenge your own beliefs and spread disruptive truths. An example on how this can play out is you may abandon a former belief system, become obsessed with a new theory, or teach others how to think for themselves through storytelling or media. And why this matters is that Uranus in Gemini reminds you that truth is a moving target, and you're here to chase it, not to cling it. But a caution at this time is dogmatism in the name of progress, or chasing mental novelty without integration could actually be a hindrance for you at this time. So stay open to being wrong and evolving your beliefs further. If your natal Uranus is in your 10th, then Uranus in Gemini is here to liberate your public voice. This is not just about a career shift, it's about a legacy upgrade through power of what you think, say, and share. People will recognize your authority by how clearly and originally you speak your vision. An example on how this can play out is you could shift careers to something media heavy, start sharing unfiltered takes online, or be known for saying what needs to be said in your field, the things that other people don't want to say. And why this matters is that Uranus in Gemini wants you to use your voice and mind and let that to be your legacy, not just your achievements. It's about the words and the ideas you put out in the world at this time. But a caution is that career instability or public backlash could arise from bold speech. So don't burn professional bridges unless you're ready to walk the long road of rebuilding on your own terms. If your natal Uranus is in the 11th, Uranus in Gemini wakes up your vision for the future as well as your place in it. This is your cue to step into social leadership via language, logic, and futuristic ideas. Your community might change fast, but it will reflect your evolving values. An example on how this can play out is you might form a movement, join a collective, or grow a following around a niche but powerful message. And why this matters is that Uranus in Gemini asks you to gather minds, not just bodies, and become a thought leader for the next wave. But a caution at this time is losing yourself in groupthink or isolating out of superiority is a little bit of a risk at this time. So stay connected to why you lead, not just how many people follow you. And if your Uranus is in your 12th, Uranus in Gemini speaks through your dreams, silence, and inner voice. This transit may bring out unexpected downloads, psychic flashes, or a totally new connection to your spiritual intelligence. An example on how this can play out is you might begin hearing subtle mental nudges that turn into life-changing decisions. Journaling, dream analysis, or automatic writing may feel more powerful to you at this time than pure logic itself. And why this matters is that Uranus in Gemini wants to connect you to the part of your mind that lives beyond language and help you translate it. But a caution at this time is disconnection from reality or spiraling into spiritual bypassing is a little bit of a risk at this time. So keep one foot grounded in daily life, even as you explore your inner worlds. Mercury in Aries, you think like a match strike, fast, hot, and direct. Ideas come in like sparks, and you're usually already acting on them before you even said them out loud. And during Uranus and Gemini, you might actually surprise yourself by thinking before acting for once. It's not because you're slowing down, it's because you're realizing your impulses may have layers. Conversations become mirrors that show you what's really driving your gut reactions. A caution at this time, though, is that knee-jerk opinions may get aired before they're fully true. So watch out for impulsively burning bridges just because a thought feels a little bit loud. In your mental revolution, learning that speed plus clarity is a superpower. And an example on how this can play out is you might stop yourself mid-sentence in heated conversation and realize, wait, I don't even believe that. I'm just used to reacting this way. Or you suddenly have the impulse to quit something, but this time you ask why, and it leads to a deeper change. Mercury in Taurus, you process slowly and deeply. Your mind likes to build understanding like a stone wall. It's solid and reliable, but Uranus in Gemini is going to throw some wild new inputs your way, and suddenly your usual wait and see method might not cut it. You start making faster decisions, but what's cool is that you still have the grounded logic behind them. But a caution at this time is you may cling harder to your mental routines just as they start breaking down. So resist the urge to stall out when spontaneity knocks. And the shift here is from mental caution to adaptable confidence. An example on how this can play out is you might decide to change your job or pricing strategy after one impactful conversation, something that normally takes months of thinking about to actually do. Or maybe you do a spontaneous podcast and you listen to shifts in your mindset overnight and you actually put it into the tangible world somehow. If your natal Mercury is in Gemini, this is your home turf. Your mind already runs like a multi-tab browser. This is kind of the ADHD placement. Even if you don't have ADHD, it's constantly switching, scanning, and connecting dots. But with Uranus here, imagine the internet got faster, but your bandwidth stayed the same. So a caution at this time is that mental burnout is real. Your nervous system can't handle every alert, hot take, and theory at once. So choose signal that's directed over just the noise. Your mental revolution, though, is learning what to ignore. An example on how this can play out is you may find yourself unsubscribing from newsletters, turning off notifications, unsubscribing from people you used to follow, or even choosing silence over chatter just to hear your own thoughts again. Or you might commit to one big idea in your life instead of chasing 10. If your natal Mercury is in Cancer, you think through your emotional memory or your intuitive thinking. It's like you store information in your heart and your instinctual folders. You process through feeling, instinct, what feels safe, familiar, and you follow sort of like your body cues, if that makes sense. But with Uranus and Gemini, expect some pattern-breaking moments when you realize certain thoughts or beliefs don't really belong to you. But a caution at this time is you may confuse emotional comfort with truth. So resisting necessary shifts because they don't feel right at first is something that you should be leaning into. And if you don't lean into that, if you think that something is truthful because it's comfortable, you might be a little bit wrong at this time. So just really be careful with your decisions. But your mental revolution is that thoughts don't always have to feel good to be true. An example on how this can play out is you might catch yourself reacting to something the way that like a person you love would have. Then you pause and then you choose differently and base it on your own authenticity. Or maybe journaling brings a sudden realization of an old fear that you've carried inside that doesn't belong to you. With Mercury and Leo, you think through identity. You need to feel personally connected to an idea before it really sticks. Your thoughts are often shaped by what feels authentic or morally right or noble, or what's actually rooted in like a source of truth. With Uranus and Gemini, you're going to get challenged, but in a good way. And a caution at this time is that your pride may resist change. So be careful not to defend outdated beliefs just because they're a part of your persona or they feel like they come from an authentic truth. You need to reevaluate something to make sure it's rooted in actual truth. And the mental revolution is decentering your ego just enough to let new ideas in without losing that fire that makes your voice so powerful. An example on how this can play out is you might publicly change your stance on an issue that you once defended passionately, or you decide to listen more than you speak in a group setting, and it leads to a breakthrough on how you show up. You might start writing or speaking in a way that feels less performative and more honest, and people actually respond better to that. If your Mercury is in Virgo, your brain works like a sorting algorithm. You think in precision, hierarchy, structure, and consequence. Your mind asks what works and what breaks down. And Uranus and Gemini is going to short circuit some of your usual logic trees, not to confuse you, but to shake loose the rules that you never knew you were following. A caution at this time, though, is that overanalysis, I can relate, I'm a Virgo Mercury too, could turn into mental rigidity. Beware the temptation to fix every glitch instead of letting things unfold. But the revolution is that realizing not everything has to be optimized to be worthwhile. An example on how this can play out is you might stop over editing something and just send it and realize nothing bad happens. I need to do that when I edit these videos, honestly, so I get that. Or you could experiment with a less organized approach in a conversation or a project and get unexpectedly great results. If your natal Mercury is in Libra, you think relationally. You like to sort of like take all of the angles in, often thinking about all of the variables rather than yourself just in a vacuum. And mental clarity comes through mirroring, and diplomacy is often built in your cognition. But Uranus and Gemini will shake your equilibrium. A caution at this time is trying to please everyone or trying to like find balance in situations that can't achieve that may leave you a little mentally exhausted, because truth doesn't always need a soft filter. Sometimes things just are the way they are. And your mental revolution is deciding doesn't have to feel like conflict. An example on how this can play out is you might speak up more in meetings, even if it risks tension. Or you realize you've been holding back your real opinions in your relationships, and once you say them, they might actually improve. If your Mercury's in Scorpio, you kind of think in X-rays, if that makes sense. You scan for motives, subtexts, and the things beneath the surface. Your mind is a detective, always triangulating the truth. With Uranus and Gemini, you might have rapid flashes of insight that bypass your usual deep processing route. A caution at this time, though, is that obsessive loops could intensify if you don't release the need to know everything before acting. And the shift is that trusting your intuition without needing full evidence first might actually be favorable for you. An example on how this can play out is you might blurt out something that turns out to be true, even if you don't know how you knew it. You're kind of like that, and maybe a hidden truth that you've suspected for years suddenly gets confirmed in a text, a headline, or just the slip of a tongue, which might be a little bit of a satisfying moment for you. But just listen to your instinct at this time, because it's going to come rapid. If your Mercury's in Sagittarius, you think in arcs and horizons, if that makes sense. Your thoughts gravitate towards meaning, synthesis, and worldview. You like to think of the big picture, and you kind of zoom out to understand the big picture. Uranus and Gemini will challenge you to zoom in a little bit. And a caution at this time is generalizations could become a little bit of a blind spot for you, so don't let broad ideals keep you from hearing critical nuance. And the revolution at this time is letting new data reshape your worldview without losing your compass. An example on how this can play out is you may find that a worldview that you've clung on to feels suddenly incomplete after reading one little small article. Or maybe someone casually mentions the detail that flips your opinion entirely, and instead of resisting, maybe you lean into it a little bit. If your Mercury's in Capricorn, you think in blueprints. Structure, efficiency, and end goals organize your thoughts. You're very organized with your thoughts, even if you got a little bit of chaos going on. You might not think you are, but trust me, when you compare your brain to the rest of the population, you probably are. Your mind filters everything through, does this work long term and does this work short term? You like to sort things through the results, but Uranus and Gemini will throw curveballs that don't fit the plan. So caution is you may try to out-logic unexpected events, so beware of shutting down innovation just because it isn't pre-approved. And your revolution is allowing mental flexibility without feeling like you're losing control. An example on how this can play out is you may abandon a carefully laid out strategy midway through the plan because a spontaneous conversation reveals a better way of doing things. Or maybe someone offers you a solution that you didn't even consider, and instead of dismissing it, you try it and it happens to work. With Mercury in Aquarius, your mind is lateral, conceptual, and future-oriented. You often download entire systems of thought before others even realize that there's a pattern forming. With Uranus and Gemini, your mental pace accelerates, but so does your emotional insight. And a caution is that you may detach from emotion in order to stay mentally above it, but avoiding feeling may block true understanding, and the revolution is integrating the heart and your mind together. An example on how this can play out is you may realize that your resistance to certain conversations isn't about logic, it's about fear. Or someone close to you mirrors your idea back with emotion, and you suddenly feel the impact, not just understand it intellectually. And if your Mercury is in Pisces, you think in waves and atmospheres. Your cognition is non-linear, it's symbolic, and it's often more about vibes, even if you're very intelligent. But Uranus and Gemini is going to inject electricity into your intuitive process. But a caution is that intuition overload is real. So stay grounded at this time. Do what it takes to ground yourself, or you may start absorbing mental static as insight. So write down everything you think possibly, or record it, and then review it later. If it doesn't make sense anymore, then maybe toss it out. And the shift is translating insight into action. So an example on how this can play out is you might get a sudden flash of insight during a mundane moment, like washing dishes or overhearing a stranger, and realize it solves something that you've been emotionally stewing on. Or you feel the need to express a long-held truth, and the words just pour out perfectly. So these moments might come to you at this time. If your Mercury's in the first, your thoughts are instinctive, immediate, and identity-driven. You process the world by articulating it, sometimes out loud, before you fully process what you mean. Your voice is closely tied to your sense of self, and your thoughts are very vivid. With Uranus and Gemini, expect sudden shifts in how you describe yourself, how others perceive your ideas, and how fast you form new perspectives. You may stop needing to make sense all the time and just say the thing, and then realize maybe you meant it more than you expected. A caution at this time is because your speech may be more impulsive. Be mindful of blurting out thoughts before fully considering the impact on yourself and others. And some examples on how this can play out is maybe you introduce yourself differently in a meeting or bio and it feels way more accurate. You hear yourself speak out loud and think, "That's not who I am anymore," and suddenly shift your tone, your name, or your presentation. These are things that could happen. If your natal Mercury is in the second, you think in terms of value and utility. Thoughts move slowly but with intent. Sometimes they move fast. I get it. I have a second house Mercury too, but they do kind of move with intent. You evaluate ideas by how they contribute to your sense of stability, self-worth, and long-term usefulness. With Uranus and Gemini, you'll begin to challenge old mental attachments around what's worth it. A belief you thought was essential to your self-worth might begin to dissolve, and this doesn't destabilize you, it frees you. But a caution at this time is be careful not to diss important foundations a little too quickly, because some beliefs around value may still serve your stability even as you question them. Some examples on how this can play out is you may change your pricing or budgeting strategy or financial philosophy after hearing one offhanded comment. Or maybe a belief you've had about what makes you valuable gets shattered and suddenly you're more confident without needing the old external metric. If your Mercury's in your third, this is Mercury's home turf. You think in loops, conversations, and in context. Your mental system thrives on dialogue, stimulation, and a constant intake of small data. With Uranus and Gemini, you'll start seeing the limits of familiar language or like immediate environment dynamics. So expect a sudden disinterest in old topics or a desire to move, change routines, or shake up how you speak. But a caution at this time is beware of rejecting valuable connections or ideas too quickly in the rush to embrace new perspectives. And examples on how this can play out is you suddenly realize a long-held belief came from like your early childhood and it no longer fits who you are. Or maybe you overhear someone phrase something in a way that completely reorients your thinking around an issue. With Mercury in the fourth, you process thoughts privately, often emotionally. You may need to feel safe to think clearly, and much of your thinking stems from inherited language or internalized family stories or internalized emotions that you've processed through yourself. So the Uranus and Gemini impact this is about sort of shaking those old habits. You'll start to realize what beliefs were passed down versus what's actually chosen, and then start choosing your beliefs for yourself. But a caution at this time is emotional upheaval may arise as long-held family narratives shift, so give yourself space to integrate these changes gently. So examples on how this can play out is maybe old phrases that you've always used suddenly feels wrong and you swap it out and feel emotionally freer. Or maybe you recognize a pattern in your self-talk that sounds like somebody else like used to give it to you and you didn't really enjoy that way of talking, and you stop mid-sentence and you reevaluate how you process thoughts. With Mercury in the fifth, your thoughts come alive through play, self-expression, and risk. You think in a creatively metaphorical or joyous way. This could be different depending on the sign of your fifth house, but you definitely think through what brings you joy. And mental breakthroughs come when you're in motion, creating, performing, joking, or doing something that brings you joy. And with Uranus and Gemini, you may suddenly feel bored by your own voice or electrified into a new way of expressing. The revolution is falling out of love with performative thinking and into authentic expressions. But a caution at this time is be aware that sudden shifts in expression may confuse your audience or yourself until you find your new authentic voice. It might take a little bit of trial and error to find your authentic voice. And so some examples on how this can play out is you start expressing unpopular opinions online or in a creative project, and it actually energizes your audience. Maybe you'll change the way you flirt, teach, or perform to be less filtered and a lot more live. With Mercury in the 6th, you think practically. Your thoughts track workflow, health, or order and optimization. You often process through service and what works best for others or your day-to-day life. And with Uranus and Gemini, your internal rule book is about to get updated. What once felt responsible may now feel a little bit restrictive. You're learning to rewire your mental habits, not just your external ones. But a caution at this time is that sudden changes in your routines might temporarily reduce your efficiency, so allow adjustment time before judging your new approaches. And some examples on how this can play out is maybe you drop a long-standing daily habit and replace it with something more intuitive and realize you're more productive. Or maybe you realize a task that you've always done in certain ways has no logic behind it anymore and you stop doing it instantly. With Mercury in the 7th, you think in conversation. You think through the lens of others or others' perspectives. Your mind often mirrors others. You process by being in relationships or by maybe conversing with others helps you process thoughts, and your thoughts are shaped by what you hear and how others respond, and you use that to sort of intellectualize what's going on. But with Uranus and Gemini, you'll begin to see where you've shaped your beliefs too much around other people or their perspectives. There may be sudden clarity about what you actually think, and a caution at this time is guard against sudden bluntness that could create tension in close relationships because timing and tone matter. And examples on how this can play out is maybe you hear other people's opinion and you suddenly realize you actually disagree, but for once you actually speak up and you put your foot down. Or maybe a new one-on-one relationship or collaboration pulls out an entirely different communication style in you, which could revolutionize the way that you think. That would be crazy, right? With Mercury in the 8th, you think deeply, privately, and intensely. You don't take thoughts at face value. You mentally process undercurrents, power dynamics, and perhaps taboo themes. With Uranus and Gemini, you'll experience rapid breakthroughs in places you thought were locked down. Maybe mental loops about betrayal, control, or shame could get restructured in some way. But a caution at this time is that intense mental shifts may stir up emotional vulnerability, so be gentle with yourself during this process. Some examples on how this can play out is maybe someone casually reveals something that you've suspected for years and it immediately shifts your emotional narrative. Or maybe you speak aloud a fear or a secret and realize it doesn't hold the power you once thought it did. With Mercury in the 9th, you think in themes and beliefs. Your mind is drawn to truth, freedom, ethics, and philosophy. You need ideas to have meaning and preferably a trajectory. You like to learn about the big picture and expand your horizons. But with Uranus and Gemini, this is about intellectual deflation in a good way. The big beliefs you've built your identity around may crack open under a small fact, and suddenly the world feels bigger. And a caution at this time is to let go of certainty carefully, because some foundational beliefs may still offer grounding as you explore your horizons. Some examples on how this can play out is maybe a passing comment from a friend makes you re-examine a spiritual or political belief you've held for years. Or maybe you abandon a long-held philosophy mid-conversation because a new framework just clicks. With Mercury in the 10th, you think strategically and with the public or the results in mind. Your ideas are often filtered through a lens of reputation, systems, or long-term legacy. You speak with intention because people are listening. With Uranus and Gemini, expect disruptions in how you plan, lead, or communicate publicly. You may break from conventional logic or surprise others with a bold new idea. But a caution at this time is that sudden shifts in your public communication may be misunderstood, so be ready to clarify your intentions when needed and don't let it offend you. Some examples on how this can play out is you change your messaging or your tone or your leadership style mid-project and it actually improves your results. Or maybe you change your mindset about work and it actually helps you improve when it comes to your success. Or maybe you admit uncertainty in a professional setting and it earns you unexpected respect. With Mercury in the 11th, you think in networks. Your mind is visionary and socially attuned. You scan the future, the collective, the pattern of where things are going. With Uranus and Gemini, though, your ideas of what's next may suddenly shift. Maybe friends, communities, or movements you've aligned with feel outdated, and new intellectual tribes may surprise you. A caution at this time, though, is abrupt social shifts might leave you feeling isolated temporarily. So seek out supportive new connections patiently. And some examples on how this can play out is maybe you leave an online group or an organization because their views feel a little bit stale to you, and you immediately find a smaller, weirder, more inspiring group or organization that aligns with you better. Or maybe a chance encounter introduces you to a futuristic idea that reshapes your whole mental framework. With Mercury in the 12th, you think in intuition, imagery, and interconnection. Much of your cognition happens below the surface. Your mind works like a dream. It pulls from symbols, memory, and collective energy. With Uranus and Gemini, though, you may suddenly find your intuition speaking louder or through unusual channels. This is a time of waking up to your mental patterns that you didn't know were there. A caution at this time, though, is that intuitive insights may feel confusing or overwhelming at first, so trust the process, but give yourself time to integrate. And some examples on how this can play out is maybe you wake up from a dream with a sentence that clarifies a confusing life situation in your real life. Or maybe a quiet moment like watching a movie or hearing a song lyric flips a switch in your brain that you didn't know need flipping.